Brilliant. So hi everyone and welcome to this, our second session, online session entitled Studying as a Mature Student, Conversations on the Mature Student's Journey into and Through Higher Education. My name is Paul Devlin. I'm a Student Support Officer at University of Leeds, and as well as working in the Lifelong Learning Centre in the University of Leeds and supporting students who are on Lifelong Learning Centre programmes, I'm also responsible for providing student support to mature students across the University of Leeds, of which there are a number, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. My role involves supporting students before they start university, certainly welcome and induction activities, and then supporting students throughout their studies. So particularly I can help people with things like their pastoral well-being, student finance, disability support, things around maybe mental health, and then just when life kind of creeps up and you need a little bit of extra advice and bespoke help and support, my job at the university is there just to help you maybe fix some of those things and to make the journey a little bit easier. And joining us, we have Jenny. Jenny, do you want to say hello, then followed by Wendy?
Hi, my name's Jenny Whitfield, and you've already heard my voice. I'm currently the Adult Learners Officer within the Lifelong Learning Centre, but only recently appointed to that role. So before I was Student Experience Officer, and I worked very closely with Paul, delivering events, including induction and things for students in coming to the Lifelong Learning Centre. I'm also there to help with any support you might need with IT or any other issues when Paul is maybe taken up. My current role, Adult Learners Officer, I'm working more with the outreach team, so more pre-entry, so people coming into the university and delivering events for people like that. Wendy?
Hi, I'm Wendy. I'm a current student, soon hopefully to graduate, and I'm just sort of completing it'll be my fourth year, 3 years as a degree and 1 year as sort of an access course. So it's nice to see so many people here again today.
Excellent, thanks both. I'll just move the slide on. Hopefully people can see the slide and can see the slide moving there. Yeah, so why have we decided to run this session? I think first of all, just to introduce our work. We are one of the few remaining lifelong learning centres in the country now, and the University of Leeds is particularly good at supporting mature students. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about that and what you can expect from the University of Leeds if you were to choose to study with us. I'd like to explore some of the main reasons that a mature student might come to university. I think realising that coming to university is a huge decision that a mature student would make, and very different to the decision that an 18-year-old student would make. I think that 18-year-olds very much are on a preordained path, really, a rite of passage where they've done their school GCSEs, they've then perhaps gone on to A-levels, and by the time they come to being 18, it's almost mapped out for them that they'll then go to university. And I think university is really daunting for an 18-year-old student. But I think for a mature student, it is absolutely life-changing. We'll have people in the room now that are parents, that are working, that have mortgages, that have partners and husbands and wives and civil partners and different responsibilities that make coming to university a really big ask. So I want to explore some of those really, and find out from you why you've decided to come to university. I think mature students in particularly kind of paint a picture of what university would be like and why maybe it isn't something for them, and how they might be the only mature student in the world and how difficult it would be. I mean, that might be true. I just want to unpick some of those myths and realities, so we might have a little quiz. There is no prize, but we will have a little quiz. I want to unpick some of the similarities and differences between a mature student and a standard age student, and we'll talk about what we mean between mature and standard age as we go. But I think we just assume that because you're an older student, you're completely different to someone that would be 18. And again, that might be true. I just want to challenge that and unpick a little bit more. I think mature students bring an enormous amount of strength to university study. It's really easy for mature students to think that they're in deficit. Well, I've been out of education for a while, so I'm not going to be very good, or I have all of these other commitments, and it's going to mean that I don't have much time. And mature students are always putting themselves in deficit, whereas actually I think quite the opposite is true, that you're bringing a level of skills and strengths to the university that an 18-year-old student in the main isn't. And then finally, we'll just talk a little bit about other areas of support, just other bits of reading, other things you might want to look up as we go. So hopefully that's why people think that they're here. We should be done by no later than 4 o'clock. Feel free to ask questions as we go in the chat room, and Jenny and Wendy are around to answer those. Just a little bit of an introduction then, very briefly, to the Lifelong Learning Centre within the university and what we do. I think we do two things. I think the first thing that we do is that we're a teaching school. So we teach our own degree programs in exactly the same way as any other school within a university. So whether that's the School of English or the School of History or the School of Health, who are all teaching their range of degree programs, we're doing exactly the same. I think the difference within the Lifelong Learning Centre is that we're creating programs of study specifically designed for mature students. What we're keen to do is that if a mature student ever comes to us and says that they would like to study, but there's potentially some barriers in the way, I'd like to think that we've removed those barriers. So, for example, we have a lot of part-time programs, so maybe 2 or 3 hours a week, one afternoon a week, one evening a week. We have some foundation or access or preparation courses for maybe people that haven't done level 3 qualifications in the past. We do study at all levels, from certificates in higher education, diplomas, foundation degrees, full degrees, part-time, full-time, vocational. So a range of courses there where we think that they might be suited to mature students. I think separately to being a teaching school within the university, we also provide a service to mature students wherever they are in the university. So the first thing that I've written on screen there, so physical spaces, we provide spaces for mature students just to be around other mature students. That's not to suggest that you won't want to be taking in all of the university and all of the people on the campus. We've got a huge university population of about 40,000 people from 180 countries, and I'd really recommend that mature students mix with students of all ages. Our youngest student is 18, our oldest student this year was 76. But it is a bit different when you're a mature student and you might just want to be in a room away from 18-year-olds periodically just to talk about things that matter to you as a mature student, and we do provide those spaces. I think we acknowledge as well that the support that mature students need is slightly different as well. So we do provide bespoke support services. So an example that I would give there would be certainly around careers. The careers advice that someone in their 40s would need is very different to the careers advice that someone who's 18 and hasn't worked before would need. So whereas the university has really fantastic career centre or academic skills centre and well-being centres that hopefully students get a huge amount from, equally, the Lifelong Learning Centre will provide that bespoke support for mature students that's a little bit more tailor-made to your needs. So things around finance as well, student finance and money is a much bigger concern for someone with 3 children and a mortgage than it potentially is for someone who's 18 that's living in halls of residence. So we provide that one-to-one support as well, both pre-entry and on course. And then the fun stuff, so events, activities, stuff, a lot of family events and Christmas parties, and me being forced to dress up as Santa Claus, and a lot of personal development sessions and professional development sessions and trips, and we go to the opera. So hopefully, as well as being a nice route into the university academically, I think hopefully those things will ensure that you have a really good time as a mature student when you are with us. I'm going to move the slide on. And don't worry, I'm not going to just talk to you all the time. I want you to do something as well. I spoke a little bit in the aims of the session there about how I think that it's a really big deal if you're thinking about coming to university, whether you've already applied, whether you are only just thinking about it now. It might be a distant kind of desire, you're just dipping your toe in. I think it's a really big move, and I think you would be disrupting your life significantly. I think it's fantastic what you would get from being a student at the university, at any university, but I think you would be making a big move. So I want to know why. Why are you all in this session now? Why are you thinking about coming to university? And what I'd like you to do, I'm just going to move the slide on. You should see along the top of the screen the letter T, which is a text tool, and you are able to click that and type directly, hopefully, onto the slide there. If not, feel free to use the chat facility. I'd like you just to pop there what you're thinking of studying, but really importantly, why? Why now? Why aren't you doing it 10 years ago, last year? Why not? What are your reasons for wanting to come to university? Does anyone want to be brave enough and start typing there? Okay, so there's one straight off. So someone's thinking about doing computing. Fantastic. And the next big question, I suppose, is why? International relations. Wow, good. You all found a text tool, I'm guessing, or starting to anyway. So someone's geology. Jenny, can you do a little bit of housekeeping in there and moving things around? Because I don't know how to. Thanks.
On it.
Thank you. Tracy there in the chat room is studying an access diploma. And there's something around kind of childcare, and I'm going to touch on that as well. That's really good in the chat there, Tracy, around saying you've had to wait until your children are old enough so that you're not having to provide childcare. It's a very practical issue, but completely. Someone there's wanting to do healthcare related subjects. Your caring responsibilities have changed now, so you've maybe got a bit of time. Let's get some more things in that why now section. That's the bit that I'm particularly interested in. Why are you wanting to study? My kids are old enough. It's interesting already, some of these answers so different to that of the 18-year-old who would just be coming to university because it was expected. What is that one there? Spent time working in different countries, became fascinated by global affairs and wanted to broaden my knowledge. I can't quite see the end of that until I've done a bit of housekeeping on it, but you did not have this desire before. Someone there feels that they would gain more now from university than they would have as an 18-year-old. That's interesting. Gain what? I think would be what I would be bouncing back there as wanting you to be a bit more specific. I think I gain quite a lot generally in life now, more than I did as an 18-year-old, but doesn't mean that I would make the big, bold move to come to university. I wonder what you want to gain there. Any others in there in the why now? Be brave. We can't tell who has written the things on there, so you are anonymous when you use that why now. So feel free just to give us a little bit of info about your story. Fine. Just someone wanting the life experience there. Better time for me to study. I want to know why there, and we will unpick. I'm fed up. My ill health was ruling my life, so I just took control and just bit the bullet and did something else. Fine, listen, I'm going to move on then, so apologies if you're still typing in there. Feel free to instead pop it into the chat room where we can still pick that up. I'm going to move on to the next slide. Bear with me. And as if by magic, I'm going to try and do a little bit of mind reading here. And I think we've already touched on some of these. Would you believe it, as you were typing, it's almost like I've guessed what your reasons for coming to study are. I think you can boil down to 4 reasons why a mature student would come to university. I think if we look at that first one, career one, We have people that are just doing jobs that they absolutely hate, and they're thinking to themselves, do I really want to be stuck doing this for the rest of my life? And they realize that the answer to that question is no. They want to do something else, and they're sick and tired. So they decide to retrain. They decide to come to university and get a qualification in something else, so that they can be something else and do something else. Does that resonate with anyone in particular? Is anyone else just in that kind of place where they're thinking, oh my God, hopefully it does? But I think equally there's a second thing around careers there, where there's people that are doing a job that they actually like doing, or working in an area that they like working in, but they can't get any further. Teaching's a really good example. Or healthcare related stuff. They haven't got the qualification, they haven't got the badge, so they can't get any further. So they come back to university to then get that qualification. One or two of you there mentioned children, and I think children's a really big factor for mature students for one of two reasons. Firstly, children just being at an age where you're able to then, you've got a little bit more free time. They're either in nursery or school, or have left school or left home, or you've just got a little bit more time to focus on yourself. But equally, I think there then becomes a motivation that you want to become a role model for your children, so that when they're of age to then go to university, they realise that it's something that they can do, because if my mum or dad did it, then that means I can do it. And then someone else touched on the ill health as well. I call it the major life event. It isn't just around ill health. Divorce, bereavement, redundancy, health issues. I could go on with that kind of negative list, but just that thing that's made you kind of stop and take stock of your life, and had a light bulb moment where you've just decided, actually, wow, I need to take stock and do something completely different in my life. I'd be really interested just to see in the chat room whether those chime with people, or if I'm completely going off piste there, if people are looking at those thinking, does anyone think that doesn't apply to them, or do people think in particular that they do? Can people let me know in the chat room there? What I want to do on my next slide, bear with me. Yeah, so Carl, yeah, I'm getting certainly the career, both I'm hating my job, I'm liking my job, the major life event. I used to call that just the divorce, but I think major life event, children. Someone else there have been a care assistant for over 15 years and they can't progress except, and they want to further the training. Absolutely, and you'll all have different kind of things that you want to study, and all have very different and unique stories. But I think the important thing there is to realise that you're probably all in very similar places as mature students as to why you want to come to university. And it can feel really isolating as a mature student or someone later in life wanting to come to university, because I suspect a lot of your friends and supporters may not be that friendly or supportive, or will be asking questions like, well, why do you want to go to university and what's the point? And I think just realising that there's other people out there like you who are wanting to come to university for largely the same reasons as you is very valuable. Yeah, so Elizabeth saying there's some stuff around self-development and creativity and having structure here, that loads around mature students really craving that structure and learning and using their brains. Let's do a bit of a quiz in the chat room then. So question number one, and hopefully you can see these on screen. So question number one, answers in the chat room. What age is the university definition of a mature undergraduate? Go. There's no prize for this. A few people saying 25 there. Carl, 21. Elizabeth, 30. So remember that this isn't what we think. This isn't the age that we thought we became mature, because I look back at myself when I was 18 and I dread to think, I would hate to meet myself. But this is what we think the university definition is. And top of the class to you if you said anyone above the age of 21. So technically speaking, the university classes a mature student, or the higher education generally classes anyone over the age of 21 as being a mature undergraduate. So they have to be 21 when they start their university course. Now, I'm going to suggest that I was less than mature than when I was 21, and I'm not going to share some of the stories with you. Well, what we tend to find in the university is that while we do have a chunk of students that are 21 plus, we tend to have mature students that are probably age 30, 40, 50, and then a good chunk of students that have retired as well. So while technically the age of students is 21 and above, we tend to find that it's probably 30, 40, 50-year-olds in the main. How many mature undergraduate students do we think are at the University of Leeds? So if we picture a university, how many mature undergraduates do we think are there compared with 18-year-olds? Go, chat room, answers. 20%, wow. It's about a quarter there, Carl saying. Someone once said that they thought we only had 10, and I don't mean 10%, I mean 10 mature students. And they were amazed when I kind of told them the reality. While the answers are going up here, so 35%, Mary, you're not sure. It's difficult to... So I think it's about 30%. Elizabeth, you're the closest there on 30%. So the University of Leeds, our entire population is 42,500 people. I think undergraduate students, we probably have about 10,000. And of those, about 3,500 would be mature students. So yeah, somewhere between 30 and 35% would be mature students, which really surprised me when I started there. I just assumed that mature students would be in the minority, and I think they are, but blimey, they're a significant minority. I think this assumption that coming to university as a mature student would be unusual, it's just not the case. There is a third of our students are mature. In the last 10 years then, so this is a yes or no, there has been an increase in mature students over the last 10 years. So we have more than ever, true or false? Yeah, we're getting people saying true there, and it's an odd one. It's really confusing, this one, because there has been a year-on-year increase in mature students. The one thing that we do hear is, though, that there's been a really steady decline in part-time students, and there's a lot of reasons for that. The decline in part-time study, and as a result, a decline in mature students accessing part-time study. A lot of stuff to do around finance, a lot of stuff to do around universities not making courses accessible for part-time students, so making them come in for a little bit of Monday, a little bit of Thursday, tiny bit of Tuesday, so they can't really work or have childcare around those hours. I know that at University of Leeds we have courses that are maybe just one afternoon a week. So yeah, next question. There are more part-time mature students at University of Leeds than full-time, true or false? I think these are all colluding here. False, false, false. Well, no, Tracy, you've said true. There's probably more full-time mature students. I think we would make the assumption that a mature student, because they had other commitments, would have to work and not be able to do full-time study, but actually they can. I think for some students, certainly the financial package available to them is a lot better than with them not being a student. That said, we in the University of Leeds, we still have a good 600 to 700 part-time students as well. but no, the majority of those students would be full-time, which shows, I think, that it's achievable and that it's doable. One of the key questions I get asked as a student support officer is, will I be able to manage as a mature student? And I always say, well, I know that you are for a fact, because we have so many mature students who are part-time. We've got thousands of them that are doing it. Next question, most mature students already have degrees. True or false? So maybe they studied something when they were 18 and have changed their mind or want to do something different. So most mature students already have degrees. Oh, look at Becky hedging her bets there with the depends. Yeah, I mean, I suppose there isn't one cap fits all. As a rule of thumb, it's false. Most mature students don't already have degrees. I think there is this myth that mature students are just returning to university for leisure subjects and wanting to study classics or doing things just because they fancy it, and that they already went to university when they were 18. The fact of the matter is that largely speaking they haven't. But Becky, I take on board your point. It does depend, and we do have students that have been to university before and maybe now want to do something completely different. What about this idea that mature students only study vocational subjects? True or false? And again, I know that it's a grey area, but in the main, true or false? It's interesting because, again, it challenges perceptions a little bit, in that obviously a mature student can study anything at university, and they do, and we have students studying kind of medieval civilization to kind of the classics, to English literature, to Italian, to... That said, though, most mature students do come to university and study vocational subjects. It's just a fact. It is a big motivation, and if we return to that previous slide where we were looking at motivations around careers, I want to change my job because I don't want to be doing this the rest of my life, or I want to develop further in post. Actually, it is vocational subjects. And last one, percentage terms. What percentage of mature students at University of Leeds have a disability or long-term medical condition? Let's put a percentage on that. Becky, you've went 400. Is that 40% or 405%? I was going to say that's a huge amount there. A lot of people coming in around. Tracy, you went 35%, 10, 20. So statistically, generally across the University of Leeds, 10% of students have a disability or long-term medical condition or mental health condition or dyslexia, dyspraxia. If you're a mature student, that's probably closer to 20%. So give yourself a pat on the back if you said 20%. And I think the reason that I think there's many reasons for that. I think some students, because they're older, they just have more health conditions. I think the reason that I put that in there is quite often I think mature students can somehow put barriers up in their minds as to why they shouldn't come to university. They either think that they won't be academically capable, or they think that they won't be able to manage. But they also think maybe that a disability or a medical condition or a mental health condition would make them less capable or less able to study, or maybe the support wouldn't be there. And again, it just couldn't be further from the truth. The university is so well versed in supporting mature students and mature students with a disability. The level of support and academic skills support and practical support with disabilities and mental health and things like that is unbelievable. And I'd be happy to chat with people one-on-one if you wanted to kind of take my details at the end of the session and talk a little bit more around that support. So yeah, just to say that not just with academic skills, but with disability, there would be a range of support as well. I'm not going to tot a score up there. You are all winners. I want to go back to this next slide and get you to do a little bit more work here. So using that same text tool before, I'd like you to have a think about what are maybe some of the similarities and differences between a mature student and a standard age student. So there's obvious differences, but I think that there's some real similarities there as well. So again, someone be brave, get something typed in there, and let's just spend a couple of minutes just thinking through what some of those similarities and differences might be. So the different, what someone's put there straight away, life experiences, yeah. I mean, we find, I mean, some students who come to university at the age of 18, blimey, some of the things that they've experienced is more than I ever will. But I think I agree. I think if you're coming to university at the age of 40 or 50, you're going to have had a lot less. If anyone doesn't know how to write on the slide there, at the top left of the screen, you should see the letter T, and if you press that, it should let you type in the screen. But feel free just to kind of use the chat room as well. So some of the similarities are maybe a passion for the subject, just you're both studying, you are all students, you've all got a desire to learn. So you're there for the same reason. There's like a shared understanding as to why you're there. You're all there to learn. There's a financial impact. I think I would argue that at times that can be a lot more significant for a mature student, but you're right. I mean, it's very daunting and overwhelming living away from home for the first time and having to pay rent for the first time. And that can be really overwhelming, whether you're 50 or whether you're 18. Wanting to be on a career path, wanting to learn, I love that, an aspiration to upgrade. Some of the differences there. So the lifestyle of a mature student. So yeah, you're less likely to, well, you're saying that, yeah, the lifestyle of a mature student is less likely to be going for social reasons. I think you're right, or a mature student's definition of social reasons is going to be different to that of an 18-year-old, because actually I think that a mature student gets just as much, and I think Wendy will talk about this when we get to Wendy. I suppose one of the big things as a mature student you get from university is that social circle, is that element. I think it's just very different, you're right, to an 18-year-old. Your commitment to studying is very different. I think I agree with that as well, and I don't want to generalize too much or stereotype. But I think you're right. I think you're making, as a mature student, a big commitment to coming to university. It isn't just the expected thing to do, and you are disrupting your life significantly. It isn't the norm. Less likely to party. Well, I could tell you a few stories there around mature students, but I shan't. More dedicated. Yeah, I mean, I get what you're trying to say there. I get in a very similar way that there's potentially more on the line there. Responsibilities, and I'm guessing from that someone's meaning, well, look, I've got caring responsibilities, I've got life responsibilities that I didn't when I was 18. I'm pretty loose and free when I was 18, but now I've got other things to think about. Any more? Yeah, so again, just life experiences. Yeah, you're more likely. I think you're right. I like that one as well. So you're more likely to live at home, and I think you're right. So an 18-year-old student, I think, tends to go to university in a place that isn't in their hometown. So there is something very much about a life rite of passage and living away from the parental home for the first time and being independent and living on your own. And while we do have some mature students that equally do that, what we tend to find is most mature students already live in Leeds and have their own homes and have their own lives and are coming to university as an addition to their existing life rather than the main purpose of the life. Yeah, some really nice things there. Excellent. Just going to move on. I saw something flash up right at the last there. And so sorry that I moved on from that, but hopefully when we play the video back, you'll be able to pause on that. We'll be able to see it. I wonder now that I'm conscious that while you've been doing some work online and using that text tool and talking about some of your own motivations for wanting to come to university and some ideas on there, I'm conscious that I've just waffled on at you for about 40 minutes there. And as much as I can talk about what I think it's like to be a mature student at University of Leeds and how the university supports you, I just wonder whether it might be worth bringing Wendy in now, who's a current student, just to talk about your experiences, Wendy, and just to give some hints and tips and thoughts and ideas. Are you still there?
Yes, I'm still here. I've
I'll
just
hand
woken
over
up.
to you now then.
Thanks. So, yes, I'm Wendy. I'm a mature student, um, just in my final sort of couple of months, due to graduate in July. Um, Really, I mean, I'm 58, 59 in sort of a month or so's time. And I've lived most of my life in Africa. Born in England, but went to Africa, and sort of when I did my O levels at 17, 16 or 17, and really didn't have the opportunity to go to university. So I started working basically straight away. I had three siblings below me, and schooling wasn't cheap in Zimbabwe. And I started off as an air traffic control assistant. And basically, I've worked, apart from having two children, worked my entire life. And up until sort of 4 years ago, never really gave university a thought at all. But I was working as a volunteer manager, looking after 200 volunteers across 9 different sites. And a leaflet, a flyer came through supposedly for the volunteers from Lifelong Learning Centre about a program called Jumpstart. Some of you may have heard of it. And Jumpstart sort of introduced you to 10 different topics over 10 weeks. And I thought, oh, wow, that sounds really good. I'm addicted to learning. I'll go along and see what that's like. It'll just be, break my sort of working time up, and maybe I'll learn something new. Not thinking that I was going to end up at university. So I applied, and I was called in for an interview. And because basically I'd been working for sort of 40 years, it was sort of said, well, you've got a lot of life experience already, and really this Jumpstart course isn't really, wouldn't really be for you. And I was a bit disappointed, but then I was told, but hang on a minute, we've got somewhere else we can put you. Um, and I was invited to go on to the course called Preparation for Higher Education. And I basically took the last space of a class of 40 that was due to start within 2 weeks. So I didn't even have time to sort of mull it over or think I was doing the right thing. It was a case of straight into the deep end. My husband was one of those that said, why on earth do you want to go to university your age? And I said, well, because I've been given the opportunity, and I think I'll regret it if I don't. And let me tell you, it's been the best decision I ever made. Preparation for higher education is exactly what it says on the tin. It prepares you. It teaches you how to write essays. As I've been out of education for 40 years, I don't know how to write an essay. It taught me how to go to the library and where to find things in the library. And I know that sounds really weird, but when you look at some of the libraries that the university have got, I mean, some of them are mind-boggling. And, you need a treasurer's map to find your way around and, find out where you're going. But it introduced me to what is going on in the world today. I mean, before my first session, yes, I had a lot of trepidation. I kept saying to myself, was I doing the right thing? Surely I was too old. I was going to be the granny of the class. Was I going to be able to do the work? Was I going to find the time? All those sort of things raced through my head that I think even 18-year-olds who are starting out at university, they're probably going through their head as well. But anyway, I started that first night, had the most incredible tutor who just opened up a whole new world to me, and made some fantastic friends who have gone with me right through till now. I think that's a big thing, is the friendships. And I was hooked. And after that first year, I started my degree in professional studies, which some people say, well, it sounds a bit woolly, but professional studies is one of those interdisciplinary programs which, again, just opens up so many different things to you, things that you sometimes have thought about but didn't really think about very much, things that you haven't thought about at all, things you've never heard of, but they're going on around you in everyday life. You learn to read The Guardian, God forbid. But all the tutors that I've had through my 4 years at uni have just been incredible. And I've always said, if I had teachers like that when I was at school, I think I would have done an awful lot better. They're very caring. They give you the lectures in such a way as it's very participatory. The professional studies course itself allows you to dip your toes into lots of other different, you can do lots of different discovery modules alongside your core modules. I've done things like forensic psychology. I'm doing history of the body this year. I've done history of psychiatry and mental illness, coaching and mentoring. There's just so many things out there on the rest of the campus, and that also gives you the chance to mingle with traditional age students, because often we do feel like we are a little entity on our own, and that we're neglected, and that we're not seen as true students, if for want of a better sort of term. But Lifelong Learning Centre, that's there to just give you that support. I always call it my second home, and everybody in it knows you. You can go to anybody to ask a question if you've got an issue, if there's something you're not sure about. And if they don't know, they know somebody who does know. As Paul says, it's not all work and no play. We've been to the theatre. You have the joy of seeing both Jenny and Paul dressed up in all sorts of things throughout different functions during the year. It's very family orientated, so all the things that go on is for you and your kids, your partners, everybody to get involved in. Thinking about disabilities, I mean, I know there's 2 or 3 in my class who didn't know they were dyslexic. They've grown up all their life, they've gone to work, they've had a difficult time at school, and suddenly they come to university and somebody says, hang on a minute, this doesn't look right, and they've been tested and they've been found out they've been dyslexic, and all of a sudden, they have a lot of support to help them through that, which is absolutely fantastic. I'm not doing this for any particular career advancement. As I say, next year I'll be 60. I'm doing it because I'm passionate about learning. I love learning new things, and I'm really worried about what I'm going to do after I graduate, because I'm going to miss going to uni so much. And if it's something that you're thinking of and you're passionate about learning, about what you want to learn, I just say go for it. There are no barriers. There are no cost barriers. There's no time barriers. All these things you will learn how to manage, especially if you do the PhD course, but you will learn how to manage your time. You'll learn how to meet deadlines, and it will just open up this brand new world for you. And I just say, go for it. Really, I've loved every single minute that I've spent at uni, and I would do it all over again. Not at 18, I would definitely do it at 55.
I had one specific question for you, Wendy, because I ran a session this morning with students that are going to be joining the university this September, and I always ask them what they're particularly worried about. And the same thing always comes up, and it has done for years really, that mature students always say that they're worried about whether they're going to be able to do it. They worry that because they haven't been in education for a while, that they're not going to be able to cope. Or do you want to talk a little bit around kind of that academic demands as a mature student, and the kind of the pressure that people put themselves under before they start, thinking that they're not going to be able to cope, and how that actually pans out as a reality?
Well, I mean, I think that's a sort of a natural reaction, say, especially when you've been out of school for a long period of time. And I felt the same thing. But and as I said, if you're passionate enough, you will find the time to sit down. People are there to show you how to get from A to B to C. You're given enough time to prepare. You're given so many resources to help you prepare. You are shown where to go and look for stuff if you need stuff. And you absolutely, I mean, okay, I'm lucky in that I don't have small children, and a lot of people do. But there's plenty in my class that have had babies while they've been at university, and have managed their children. If their children are a little bit older, you've always got there's skilled staff at the Lifelong Learning Centre. There's your tutors. You have a personal tutor. You have your peers. You have people that are in classes that have already done the year that can help you. The help and the support is just absolutely phenomenal. And as I said to you, if it's something you want to do, you will take all of that on board. It's a lot of stuff to take on board. And I don't think anybody is alone in thinking that they're not going to cope, because you will cope. You will find a way to cope. We've all got our own coping mechanisms. As I say, we did a lot of studying together as study buddies in a group. You have your personal tutor to go and talk to. I just can't emphasize how much support there is to get you through this.
Thanks, Wendy. I do want to open up just to general questions from people in the chat room, but before I do, bear with me 1 second while I move the slide on. And thank you, Wendy. I think someone wrote in the chat room there that it was powerful stuff, really inspirational, really encouraging. And just to say to the people that were listening to that, we haven't told Wendy there what we wanted her to say, really. We haven't primed her with things that we would like her to say. I think what we've done there is just asked her if she'd like to be part of this session, and given her free range to say whatever she wanted. So that was authentic. We haven't paid her to be here or say these things. She doesn't get extra marks for doing that. So thank you,
I thought I was.
I just wanted to flag then, I mean, there is other information and support before I open it up to questions. So the first link there takes us to the Lifelong Learning Centre's website. There'll be other sessions like this, student finance, starting university life. Anything else that you think might be useful, just drop us an email and we'll think about putting it on. Wendy was talking around taster days and jumpstart and summer schools. Now, I'm very conscious that a lot of the events that we would normally run face-to-face are a little bit up in the air at the moment, but do keep an eye on the landing page. For anyone that's maybe thinking about wanting to come to university, so some of you may have already applied, some of you may be just attending this thinking you want to find out a little bit more. We do have a guidance service which is completely impartial. So if you were to ask me questions about university, I can only really tell you about University of Leeds, but our guidance staff can work one-to-one with mature students from the Leeds and local areas and tell you a little bit more around what your options might be and get you thinking about what you might want to study. We do a handbook every year for people that are thinking about, well, people that are joining the university in September. We do a nice little guide for them. It won't be relevant to you now. I think it's last year's version for all of the students that started university last September. I just thought I'd pop it up there just so you could have a read to get a feel for the kind of support that you could expect as a mature student. We've got a Returning to Study Facebook group, so lots of other people like Wendy and staff members and other students and new students and current students. I'll give that a look. I thought Wendy's talk there was the best thing about this session. There's something very inspirational about hearing a current mature student. There's loads of videos on the YouTube channel. So there's workshops like this, but there's loads of people talking about their experiences. Go and have a look, because some of the stories, but take a box of tissues because there'll be a few tears along the way as well, but there's some great stories up there. And drop us a line as well. There's the email address. We don't bite. If you've got any thoughts, worries, concerns, questions, things you'd like to ask, things you'd like us to do, then do let us know. Mary's asking if she can screenshot this page to go back on it. I don't think there was anything stopping you, but equally, there will be a video recording of this on the YouTube channel, so you'll just be able to go up to that page and pause it and then see them. Does anyone have any questions then, either for myself, for colleagues? Jenny, you've raised your hand. You want to say something?
Yeah, just to say, everybody, there will be a follow-up email sent round to everybody who's attended today, including all this information that Paul had on that last slide, and a recording to today's session, so you can watch it again. So there will be a follow-up email with all that information, and if there's anything that we've missed, feel free to obviously respond to that email once it's sent to you.
Nice. And I think that was there isn't any major revelations in this presentation. I think it was a chance for us just to all get together and talk about what it is like being a mature student, just to dispel a few myths, just to answer a few questions, to hear from Wendy. But yeah, if anyone does have any questions, and like specific questions, and there is no daft questions either, if you want to ask Wendy anything from her perspective as a student, or you want to ask us a question around applying for university or anything like that, then feel free to pop them in the chat. But other than that, I just wanted to thank everyone for coming today and say that that is the end of the session. You should be able to see something pop up on screen there, which is just asking you to evaluate how you found the session. As Jenny said, we will follow up by email. If you've had all of your questions answered and you are happy, you can leave the session. In the top left-hand corner, you'll see 3 lines. If you click on that, it'll then open up a menu that lets you leave session.